Oh, here I go. Oh,
When Luigi's Mansion 2 came out in 2013, I didn't immediately fall in love with it. In fact, it's my least favorite game in the franchise to date. But with it coming back out on the Switch, I wanted to re-examine those feelings that I have for the game. It has been a full 11 years since I played it. I didn't touch it ever since its release year. With that much time in between, it's safe to say that my feelings may have changed. So with the Switch release being out now, I wanted to pick it up, play it, and see if I still feel the same way after more than a decade away. And it turns out I was completely wrong. Dark Moon is certainly unique among the franchise. It has none of the hallmarks of what made 1 and 3 so special for me, but it's those things that differentiate it and make it a really interesting game to play in 2024. Dark Moon is designed around the limitations of the 3DS because that's the platform it first launched on, whereas the GameCube original is much more open, and of course the successor is also much more open owing to the increased hardware power of the Switch. But what I didn't think that I would actually appreciate about this game is its portable vibe. After all, the Switch has a great mix of games that were clearly designed to be played in handheld mode, and ones that were designed to be played on the big screen. I still played Luigi's Mansion 2 on the big screen, but I appreciate the concessions that were made to fit it onto the 3DS back in 2013 a bit more today. Those concessions largely being that rather than just having free reign over any of the environments you're in, you do missions. Professor Egad will give you a set objective and you have to complete that objective. Once you complete it, you're pulled back out, given a score, and rated on your performance as well as any ghosts you caught, gems you found. The core of Luigi's Mansion is still there, but it's a very different take on it, and I imagine that's because of the memory limitations of the 3DS at the time. But on the Switch, obviously you can do much, much more than what the 3DS was capable of, but it's still neat to play this because when I think about booting up Luigi's Mansion 3, it's not a game that I really want to play in handheld mode. It's not a game that I think I could do on a train or during a road trip because I'd want to focus more of my attention on the game itself. Whereas with Luigi's Mansion 2, I can do just a singular mission. I can hop in, complete an objective, put my Switch back to sleep, and play it again later. And that is a really novel concept for this series because neither 1 nor 3 are like that. They're designed to be big, exploratory sequences where you go systematically through a mansion or whatever and find your way. 3 did kind of borrow this concept with the idea of floors, but it's very clear that in 2, these missions were designed to save memory on the 3DS. It's interesting how the context of this release changes my view of it. We already have a proper quote-unquote Luigi's Mansion in the form of Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Switch, so I don't feel as upset as I did by how Luigi's Mansion 2 is presented, because on this platform, it's an alternative to the full-fledged Luigi's Mansion experience that we had with 3. Additionally, since the release of this one in 2013, we got a full-on 3D remake of Luigi's Mansion 1 released on the 3DS, so I'm not waiting for anything any longer from this series. I've recently had a handful of releases. It doesn't feel like Luigi's Mansion is being ignored, and I think that that makes a big difference in how I approach Luigi's Mansion 2, because now I'm a fan who has gotten everything he wanted and now has this alternative take on the series to kind of view through a new lens. I'm no longer worried about whether or not Nintendo is going to change up the formula for Luigi's Mansion. 3 has answered that question for me. They went back to something that I find to be a more suitable direction for the franchise as a whole. So now I can view Luigi's Mansion 2 for what it is, a unique take on the formula of an established franchise. Whereas when it came out originally, I was worried that all games would be divided into bite-sized missions and you'd no longer have one large environment to explore. Rather, it seems that Next Level Games is going to kind of keep the DNA of the series intact while playing and experimenting with it. And that recontextualizes how I view the series as a whole, but more importantly, it allows me to further appreciate what Next Level Games did back in 2013 with this, and what Tantalus has done to improve upon the original experience. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD was never going to look as good as Luigi's Mansion 3. This is obviously a remake of a 3DS game, which means animations are a bit more crude, models are not as polished, and the game overall just doesn't look as nice, but that's normal. This is not going to be a AAA effort the same way Luigi's Mansion 3 was. Obviously, Next Level is probably working on something else, and Tantalus is sticking as close to the original vision for the game as possible, but there are noticeable improvements in quality. This game looks far better than it ever has, and that's a really welcome addition when you're playing it on a big screen. And it was while playing on that big screen that I started to realize that my feelings around Luigi's Mansion 2 were shifting. This was a game that had a lot of great ideas, some that I loved in Luigi's Mansion 3 that started here, like the Scare Scraper and the Dark Light. Those are really cool additions to the franchise as a whole that started in this game, though in 2013 I couldn't really fully appreciate them for whatever reason. I also love the almost Metroidvania-style way in which each subsequent mission gave you new pieces to the puzzle to figure out that would eventually culminate in a boss fight. That first fight against the spider is really, really fun, and honestly, I kind of want to go back and see it in 3D because it's so obviously meant to feel at times as though that boss is popping out at you and playing with the depth of field that exists in the 3DS original but can't be replicated on the Switch. This is my way of saying that Luigi's Mansion 2 HD has made me appreciate the original more than I ever have. I can see the brilliance of design that appears in portions of this game that led to Next Level Games essentially getting the keys to the franchise. With each mission I played, I could feel myself getting more drawn in. And you know what? There's a lot to love about Luigi's Mansion 2. That's not something I thought I'd be saying in 2024 or any year prior, but here we are. So much of what I love about this series is still present in 2, from repurposing old Nintendo products to become maps or ghost detectors. The dual scream in this game has the bangingest ringtone I've ever heard, and I'm definitely putting it on my phone as soon as I'm done editing this video. Luigi is still as cowardly and expressive as he's ever been. The reluctant hero vibe that permeates this series is alive and well in part 2, and really, I think I judged this too harshly for no reason, but it took the benefit of time and the Switch to show me that. The Switch has proven to be kind of a proving ground for games that didn't reach an audience on other platforms, whether that's the slew of Wii U ports we've gotten or this most recent 3DS port. Nintendo knows the quality of their games, and, well, they proved me wrong here. I know I've only played a handful of hours of Luigi's Mansion 2, and that's why this is kind of just an impressions video, not a formal review. But if I were to review it right now, its score would be pretty high. I'm having loads of fun with this game. I'm enjoying it, and I honestly can't wait to go back to it. So here's what I'm going to say. If you're like me, and you've written Luigi's Mansion 2 off because you didn't enjoy it on the 3DS back in the day, I implore you to come back and try the HD port, or even just pick up the 3DS game again now that you've had the benefit of time and you've played Luigi's Mansion 3. I promise you that you're going to find more to love in this game than you probably originally thought. And if you want to play it on the big screen, which, as I feel, is where Luigi's Mansion belongs, then you can do that here. It's a great way to kind of get the best of both worlds. So whether you revisit the 3DS original or buy this new Switch HD version doesn't matter to me, but I think you will be happy to find that there is so much good in Luigi's Mansion 2.